Recording in progress.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. It is 6:02. Welcome and thanks for joining us, everyone. Our first candidate is Regina Mahoney. Hopefully folks have found information about Regina in our press release, and if not, it's available on essexjunction.org. The chat is disabled, but if you are having any technical issues, you can post it as a question and answer, and I will respond accordingly. The question and answer button is down at the bottom of your screen, and so that's where you can select and type your questions. You can choose to keep your questions anonymous if you want for the candidate. Only myself and the candidate will be able to see the questions that come through, and certainly you can submit them at any time. We will attempt to get through as many questions as possible after Regina does a short presentation, and we will be reviewing questions to ensure that they are legal, respectful, and appropriate. And I'll ask the questions verbally of the candidates, and those are the ones that they will respond to. If we do not get to your question, I apologize, and I will forward them to the city councilors for them to consider when they interview the candidates. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Regina. Welcome, Regina.
Great, thank you so much, Brad, and thanks everybody for joining tonight. I'm going to share my screen and give folks a presentation to just introduce myself a bit and talk through some work that I have done. Just to folks, give you some background on me, on where I'm from, and how I got to where I am today. I grew up in Freeport, Long Island. That's on the South Shore, about 10 minutes from the beach and a 40-minute train ride into the city. So very much appreciated both built and natural environments right from the start. I was lucky enough to be able to get up to the Adirondacks often, and especially once a year, because my mother grew up in upstate New York, and the only way she would agree to move to Long Island is if we got to go up to the Adirondacks. So we did that, which is great. I went to the University of Maryland at College Park for my bachelor's in geography. During that time, I got the opportunity to spend a semester on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, which essentially is the only reason why there's this large spread of map here. And it was still to this day one of really amazing experience. Learned a lot about forestry and fishery practices, and really land use and the proper natural resource planning. Then I went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst for my master's in regional planning, and really fell in love with New England here and decided to stay. My first job out of grad school was for the Farmington River Watershed Association in Connecticut. We did a lot of water quality work and worked with the municipalities in the watershed. And ultimately, I realized the rubber hits the road at the municipal level, and wanted to get a municipal planning job, and was lucky enough to get to be the town planner at the town of Milton. Was promoted to planning director, and ultimately was at the town for about 8 years. Then the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission was doing a really amazing, very comprehensive planning and visioning project for the county called the ECOS Plan. And I really was excited to be a part of that. So I was lucky enough to be able to work with the team at Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And I have been there for almost 11 years now. So I am a manager with a planning background. And that background really, I think, makes me uniquely suited to really look at all of the issues that a municipality has to manage and deal with, and services that they provide to their residents in a holistic way. And I really excel at finding a balance in varying policy positions for the greater good as a whole. And really, I sort of do this quite a bit in this kind of framework, vision and strategic planning, then implementing that vision, and then monitoring success. So tonight I am going to walk you through a few projects that I have done in these categories. And then I'm also going to talk more specifically about an Essex Junction project that follows this framework. And that will be that. So strategic planning, I think this is a pretty critical role for municipalities and government in general to play, because it really helps you prioritize the issues at hand and stay focused on those priorities, because you've got a lot coming at you that can be kind of get you sidetracked. But really, I think it's important and fiscally responsible to stay focused on the vision and strategies and priorities that the community has set collectively together. So these are some examples of work that I've done. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the ECOS plan. Again, that plan that brought me to Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. This was a big effort, a $1 million grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, AKA HUD. Also, the partners were Environmental Protection Agency and the United States Department of Transportation. Economic Development Administration was also a partner as well. And really, we were looking to based on that grant, which was really stop thinking about transportation and the environment and housing separately, really start thinking about it collectively as a whole, so you can prioritize and figure out what are the most important things moving forward and how to achieve a healthy, inclusive, and prosperous community. So we had a 65-member steering committee, all of the municipalities, including Essex Junction, of course, and really a number of different partners, including Vermont Housing Finance Agency, who helped with the housing analysis, AALB, Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, all kinds of folks. And really, we did quite a bit of robust community engagement, including 10 whole days at the Champlain Valley Fair. I don't think I was there for all 10 days, but I was definitely there for quite a lot of that and really liked talking with folks there. So this is a mural that Matt Haywood from the Image Farm created for us for the ECOS plan. And it's a visual that really helps to try to connect all of the different aspects of really government and planning for our residents. And one thing that became very clear in the ECOS plan is that we have a major shortage in housing that is evident by those experiencing homelessness, as well as businesses who have a lot of difficulty recruiting workers to the area because they can't find a place to live. And with that, it's also important to concentrate where that housing should go. So want to make sure that folks have access to bike and walking infrastructure, the bus, because that helps reduce our energy use. And so I can kind of go on, but I don't have the time to sort of point out a lot of the different ramifications that come into play when you kind of pull one piece out of this. But the intent and the purpose is that collectively, if we're thinking about all of these things collectively, we can really get focused up on the important issues and stay focused on those. So moving to the next step of the framework, implementing. Once you've got that vision, what are the next steps to make that vision become reality? So this, again, is just an example of things that I have done in my career thus far that falls into this category, from managing the budget and personnel in the planning office in Milton to putting together the capital improvement plan, getting grants for actual infrastructure there, and working with a variety of state and federal grants at CCRPC. Then sort of moving down here into some of the more regional partnership work. Building Homes Together is really a partnership that almost grew out of the ECOS plan because housing was so important, and because we really at the Regional Planning Commission did an excellent job at expanding relationships and working with folks, all kinds of stakeholders in the region. So I'm going to talk a bit more about the Winooski Form-Based Code project, and then also Essex Junction zoning. So this is Mallets Bay Avenue in Winooski. We at the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission were able to fund this project, and I managed this project. We got a consultant team on board for, I think, about $75,000, and we did quite a bit of public engagement. Did lots of visioning work with the Farrell Madden team and Urban Advantage and Dreyer Designs to put this together for the community. And you can see from the zoning side of things, the intention was to set up the zoning so that the built environment would be how the residents would like it to be. And then with that growth, ideally, that increased tax base can help make the improvements in the streetscape to ensure a more safe and walkable environment, and with street trees that can really help with carbon sequestration and slow stormwater, and really try to create an environment that is deserving of the residents of Winooski. And so if you go to that spot today, you'll see Champlain Housing Trust's one of their latest projects. This is a really great project because it's got home ownership units in it as well. And the building itself has some row houses and townhouses in the middle. And it really meets the vision that the residents set out. And it also utilizes a vacant parking lot here in front of the O'Brien Community Center in Winooski. So then moving on to monitoring. At the municipal level, there are annual reports to communicate progress and success, and audit information and future budget information to residents. For the ECOS plan at the regional level, we have committed to monitoring that work every year going forward from when the plan was first done. And so we track a lot of indicators and publish a report every year that really helps us and is a communication tool to the communities about whether we're going in the right direction or not. Also personnel evaluations, I'm certainly familiar with doing those for my staff and my department. It's really critical step, certainly in government, to make sure that staff is working towards that vision that you're working towards. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in terms of monitoring on the Building Homes Together annual reports. So this is an infographic from the first round of the Building Homes Together. It was a 5-year campaign to build 3,500 homes. We were successful at doing that through getting additional funding from the state legislature, through working with all of the municipalities on both regulatory improvements and non-regulatory tools for increasing housing. But we fell short on the affordable goal. The intent was to build 700 affordable homes, and we only were able to build 536. And so we have collectively decided to do a second Building Homes Together 2.0, and really the challenges are still the same. As I'm sure folks know, it's hard to avoid hearing somebody who hasn't been able to find a house. So we are stepping up the goal to 25%, and hopefully with the ARPA funds, we'll have some greater success. And the 2020 slowdown did not help from COVID in this time period. So to recap with an Essex Junction example. So the first part of vision and strategic planning. Really, this starts with a comprehensive plan at the municipal level. My supervised my staff, Melanie Needle, who worked on this plan with the Planning Commission, and Robin at Essex Junction. I wrote the previous plan in 2014. And really, it's a holistic look at all of the issues facing the city with some priorities and strategic actions on how to address those things. And one of those implementation steps is the Design Five Corners project that was done by Du Bois and King with some image work from Julie Campoli. And so this is something that really I think is very critical for the junction to really see this vision come to fruition. So it feels safe in the downtown to walk and bike, and also for the trunk routes coming into the center of the village as well. So in this last year, I have been working with the Essex Junction Planning Commission on some zoning changes to try to really make some improvements so that the developments you see coming forward have some better streetscape connectivity and some improved walking and biking infrastructure, both within the center of the village and the trunk routes going into them. And I'll just give a little bit of a plug that there's a public hearing for the Planning Commission on these regulations on August 4th. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out. So going forward, I am very much looking forward to working with the city and the team of great folks at the city and city council and boards and commissions and the staff to do the items listed here. I think that I have the experience and expertise to do this work. I am very, very excited about doing this work and really looking forward to bringing my energy to the city. So I will stop there.
Great, thanks, Regina. So it is 6:19 and we are going to do Q&A until 6:40. And at that time, I will post in the chat and give folks the opportunity to provide the city councilors with some feedback about your experience tonight with Regina. So certainly, folks, the question and answer button is available, and please, again, you can submit those anonymously or attached to your name. And as those come in, I will read those out to Regina. Regina, I do have some here as well. Why don't you start by telling us what you like to do for fun outside of work?
Yep. So I really love to hike, yoga, walk my dog, and also really love triathlons. I am, and just got a lot of swimming in the last 2 weeks, so hopefully I'll be prepared for the one coming up at Granbury State Park in the middle of August.
Great. Regina, would you talk about your experience and expectations regarding managing a full city budget?
Sure. Yeah, so I think the process has lots of input from the department heads, bringing that forward, and I look forward to working with the director of finance to put that budget together, especially for the first time really as a city on its own. I've looked at all of the municipal agreements between the town of Essex and the city of Essex Junction, and look forward to making sure that those contracted services are incorporated, and again, sort of monitoring over time if those situations are working. Yeah, I think also really going to be important to sort of think about the best use of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, that can really be used for a variety of reasons, but definitely have a timeline to them, and really want to make sure that those resources are being used in the best way possible in the city. Because it's definitely one-time funding, and with that really need to be aware and concerned about not using it in such a way that sort of grows a service that we would not necessarily be able to continue to do after that time frame is over. So definitely look forward to sort of thinking through those issues, as well as the federal infrastructure dollars that will become available as well.
Great, thanks. Deb, if you intended to submit a question, I only got the first part, so if you could resubmit, that would be great. Regina, can you please talk more about your experiences with public participation, and what's your vision for how to communicate to residents all the things you need to tell us?
Sure. So I think communicating with residents, I would definitely do a update of sorts, either weekly or bi-weekly, whichever makes the most sense for folks. And I have seen this done either as a newsletter that goes out to residents, and certainly would keep the city council and department heads up to speed on issues as well. I think that can really just be a great way of being sort of a short, quick, concise information about what your city is doing to work on your behalf. Especially today, we're just sort of like so overwhelmed with stuff. But if people are interested, they know they could always go to the website and find that. Probably could put it on the city's Facebook page as well, and could think about some kind of newsletter option in the future as well. And public engagement. I think it's critically important to just be thinking about how to do that better. We have, as sort of, if I just go into my resident seat, there are probably, I don't know, 10 different opportunities of things that I could be going to every single night to participate in. And I'm just not sure that that's really a fair expectation of folks going forward. So I think we just really sort of need to think about better ways to keep residents informed and make sure the engagement is coming in a way that can prioritize what the city needs to do going forward. So then the city can really put those things into action. Also, I think it's important to really think about making sure that everybody in the city, all residents, have access to information and the ability to participate. So that may necessitate translating materials and coming up with ways to sort of go to where folks are, as opposed to expecting them to always come to a city meeting. And then I think one silver lining of COVID is that we definitely can manage these hybrid meetings and provide folks ways of coming and participating without always physically coming. And so I think making sure that those systems are working well and streamlining them is a good approach.
Great. Thanks. And as a quick follow-up, what are the ways you prefer the public communicate with you and staff?
Great question. I think email or coming in person or calling, I think works well. I think if there's any particular issue, I think it works best if folks go to the department heads first. And if an issue is not resolved, then certainly open door policy from me to hear and address any issues that folks have.
Great, thanks. Regina, what unique skill, talent, or superpower would you bring to the position?
I think that my superpower is really bringing folks together. I have really strong relationships with folks that I have worked with in the past. And I think part of that is my ability to really listen completely and really hold a table for folks to get their ideas out, and then collectively bring some collaboration on the item and move it forward. So a lot of times I am the person who is setting up the agenda, taking the notes to make sure everybody's clear on what their tasks are leaving the meeting, and then following up to make sure those items are followed through on in preparation for the next meeting, and really just doing the sort of organization and legwork to really keep things moving along.
Great, thanks. Regina, how would you approach a chronic complainer who may or may not share misinformation?
I'm sorry, what was the last part of that, Brett?
Who may or may not share misinformation in the community?
I think part of it is being forthright and acknowledging that there are always two sides to every story, and making sure that I get the two sides to the story, and certainly listening and acknowledging the issue, and ideally, hopefully there would be something that could be done about it, but being clear that there for the greater city as a whole, there may not be something that can be changed to help this individual person, and that while that might not seem fair, that might just be the reality of the situation, but certainly would be open to listening and seeing if there's any creative ways to address the issue while also staying focused on the goal for the community as a whole.
Thanks. Regina, there's a lot of positive energy and excitement for the new city. What ideas do you have for building on citizen engagement?
I think really using the opportunity that we have right now for lots of folks excited about this step, and a lot of real social capital of folks interested in wanting to come to the table. And I think that is a really great opportunity to think through what can be done with that unique ARPA funding right now, and how best to get that to make the best use for the city going forward. So just one potential opportunity. It's kind of nice to have a lot of folks at the table and a lot of interest, and actually have some funding that has a little bit of flexibility in how it can be used. I think also just trying to have folks participate in the ways to really sort of reach the vision of that different streetscape, so people feel comfortable, and maybe it's more collective bike rides or different kinds of things to bring attention to the sort of larger visions that have been in place, like connecting different neighborhoods with bike paths. Some of this work doesn't necessarily get too many legs under it if there isn't motivation from the residents to see it happen. So, yeah.
How do you expect to manage our newfound relationship with the town of Essex?
Well, I have a great working relationship with Greg Dugan and Marguerite Ladd now. I would expect that to continue. I think just making sure that we are consistently meeting on a regular basis to make sure things are going well. I think it's an interesting situation where there's been so much effort to go in one particular direction, and now it's a different direction, but it seems like there are a lot of great agreements in place to really lay out how this is going to work for the year, and lots of good process in place in those agreements for how to think about advancing beyond this next year and into the future on those. So yeah, I think it's just staying connected with those folks. Probably still makes sense to have trustee and select board joint meetings on occasion to consistently just stay connected and see how things are working out.
Great, thanks. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm wondering if you can talk more about how to expand and reach out to connect with diverse and in using diverse and inclusive engagement with our community.
Yeah, so I think really a part of this work is not making sure or not expecting everybody to come to the city meetings and to come and volunteer on boards. I think part of it is a little bit in this work of reaching out to communities and getting a sense of what their priorities are. I think I actually just had a training at CCRPC today, this afternoon, and starting to think a little bit about how planners aren't just the folks who have those titles and the education to do that work. Everybody can be a citizen planner. And everybody has thoughts and issues about how to improve things in their city so that they'll feel more safe out on the street. And so I think it's really working to develop those relationships with those folks so that their issues are front and center in the work that the city is doing. And this is certainly easier said than done, but as opposed to the city having a particular project and going to residents and asking for feedback, I think it needs to be a much more not just sort of give and take relationship like that. It's really got to be clear that the city is taking the information from these folks and what their issues are and really doing something about it as best as possible. And then ultimately, hopefully, there's more diversity on the actual commissions and boards itself, because for better or worse, the decision-making and the power is set up in a democratic way, the way that we have it. And ideally, we would have much more diverse representation on those boards that better reflect the residents of the city. But that's not going to happen until there's relationship building first and trust first in these communities.
Regina, what's one thing you would change about Essex Junction?
I'll put a Robin hat on for a second. 4 corners instead of 5 corners, maybe, for traffic.
Great. How will you manage our contract with the police department and deal with the fact that our laws are enforced by a department that you will not supervise?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I was pretty happy to read the police contract with the town, and there really is acknowledgement in there for the city manager to work collectively with the town manager, though it is very clear that this is a town department and managed personnel management by the town. I think, but there's definitely room for communication and information for this and options for the city manager to be in communication and have sit-down meetings collectively with the police chief, the town manager, and the city manager. So I think that that is really a great system set up, I think. I think also the city is still going to be paying a decent amount for that service. So I don't know that the city is in a bad place in terms of taking a harder stance if the city feels like the town is not managing that department well. But I've got confidence that that at least me, certainly good relationship with Greg Dugan, and feel pretty confident that that relationship will be two-way communication, and hopefully if there are any issues in the city, and certainly there are opportunities to address those.
Great. In April, we passed local option tax, which will start in October. What are some ways that you think we should be utilizing that new source of revenue?
So I think in the capital project world, I think there's probably really no end to what that could be used for in terms of new infrastructure or operations and maintenance of existing infrastructure. But I do think that there's, again, in terms of setting up the city well for the future, all of the infrastructure really has to be well maintained. So I'm glad it's an extra revenue source in case there ever is a need to use it in a way to fix any emergency problems that happen. But I do think in an ideal world, in years where that is creating an extra revenue source that doesn't need to be used for existing infrastructure, I really think that streetscape improvement can be a really good use of those funds, because it's a little bit of a snowball effect that folks will continue to participate and come to the village to shop and go to restaurants and bring their money into the city, especially if that streetscape is really looking good and vibrant and feels welcoming for folks. And so it seems to me to make some logical sense that that funding source would help continue to create the environment for more folks to come and buy things and create more revenue.
Great. Well, Regina, that is our last question. It is 6:40. I am.
Oh shoot! You got on mute, Brad.
Oops, sorry. There we go. Thank you. I'm trying to post in the chat, and I'm hoping it will let me. It appears that everyone should be able to see in the chat a link to a form. And this is an evaluation feedback form. The results, it's anonymous, and the results will go directly to the city councilors as they deliberate and make a final selection. So thank you for your time, Regina. We appreciate it. And everyone else, I will leave a couple of minutes for you to right now complete the evaluation, please, for Regina. And then we will begin at 6:45, which is in 4 minutes, with our second candidate. Thank you, Regina.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Have a good night. So for everyone else, hopefully you can see in the chat the link to the form. Please click on that, complete the evaluation. We'll give you 4 or 5 minutes to accomplish that, and then we'll be back with Coralie. Thanks. Hi, Coralie, how are you?
Hi, Brad. I'm well. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm just going to give folks a couple more minutes to complete the evaluation for Regina. So I will come back in about 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, Coralie, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks. So just for folks at home, we'll do the same process. Coralie will be given the opportunity to do a short presentation, and then that'll be followed up by a question and answer, and then an opportunity to provide some feedback. So, Coralie, the floor is yours.
Awesome. So presentation, I don't have PowerPoint slides or anything to share. I just want to share a bit about myself and my skills and what I'm looking forward to here with this new city of Essex Junction, which I'm very excited about. And then really, I want to hear what's important to the community and what questions they have to learn more about me. So I'm going to keep my remarks short so that I can learn mostly about what's important and answer questions that folks have. So I know that Brad shared my background as far as like where I've worked and those types of things. I'll share a little bit more. I am a 9th generation Vermonter. I currently live in St. Albans, Vermont, which is where my family's from. I am a mom of 3 teenagers who are mostly out of the house and 2 stepdaughters, and I have 3 grandchildren, a new grandbaby in April. So used to having a full cadre of kids and a working mom. And so so I share that little bit about my background. I also we own a maple syrup operation, and so my husband and I do that as well. And I love building community. So when I first came to the city of South Burlington 6 years ago, I wasn't sure why Kevin Dorn, the current city manager, thought that would be the perfect job for me with my background in higher ed and finance. And I now know the skills that I have picked up in operations, finance, community engagement, public relations, strategic planning, leadership coaching, building both internal and external relationships have allowed me to do the job that I've done in the city of South Burlington. And so I speak to that in the fact that the time that I've been there, I was able to work as part of the senior team. So pretty much engaged in most of the decisions that were made at the city and fully engaged with that and educated both the community and looked at community feedback and really hearing what the community wanted and measuring that, working with our internal team, the staff, against the comprehensive plan, our annual work plans, strategic plans, and making sure that also worked in our budget and in our capital improvement program. I think when I came aboard, the vision for City Center, which is the downtown that South Burlington wanted, had been a vision for 40 years. And I feel a little bit of deja vu or some similarities with the city of Essex Junction for a while, wanting to be their own entity, and the day is here. And that's kind of where I entered in South Burlington. We were ready to get started on the projects of City Center. The vision had been there 40 years, and then it was, how do we build a new street? How do we get a new city hall and library? How do we get a new downtown park? How do we start to have connections with for bike ped? And so really imagining and reimagining what the community wanted and then bringing everybody together. It's a team of upwards of 180 employees. I have overseen operations there in some capacities. I have also built the human resources component there. So everything from new payroll system, policies and procedures, three unions there to negotiate contracts, and I've been through that 3 times, once in the midst of COVID, and we just completed the last round. So those are always fun. But I will say this, despite any people sitting on either side of the table, whether it's in the community or internally with staff, at the end of the day, it's about keeping those relationships growing and meeting the goals of the residents. So customer service and meeting the goals. So I pride myself in, while we might not always see eye to eye, we collaborate and at the end of the day, get to those common goals. So wanted to mention that I will say that my experience is at the senior leadership level, and yet I've done some of the nitty gritty, but I really rely on the team, the department heads, which have a similar structure to what the city has, although some of them shared services still or contracted services, I guess, with the town. So looking forward to how that how we can manage to have those services either within the city or continue to contract the components that make sense. For example, maybe the police department continues to make sense as we move forward. As far as other things, it might make more sense for the city to have those positions internally. So looking forward to working with Greg and Marguerite in the town as to how we collaborate moving forward. In addition, collaborating with perhaps the school board and that population as well. So I would love, Brad, I could go on and on about the projects I've done and about the different components. You know, I would rather answer questions and see if I can share more information in that way and give more specific examples via the questions.
Great, that sounds good, Coralie. Thanks. Can you talk about some of your experience and expectations regarding managing a full city budget?
Yes. So for me, a full city budget pertains to both the general funds, enterprise funds, and then the capital improvement program. And so what I sometimes see is the capital improvement, the CIP, there are grand visions and we have to manage funding for that. What I have seen is sometimes the HR component, the people part for additional services, doesn't always get added. So I'd be interested in what the planning is for that as far as maintenance of operations as services grow or change. I'm used to building that budget with department heads. We do that as a collaborative effort, also looking to the community for any input. My typical process working with our team. And again, my role is not as the finance director, but working with them to get the information out is to reach out to committees to find out what their areas of concern or things that they want in the budget. And so they usually are getting that feedback from the community, or we build those streams. So when we're looking at the budget, of course, we want to meet budget every year. I love it when it comes in and you've got 65% or higher of voters saying yes to the budget and did not have a defeated budget. I attribute that to the team all working together. Tom Hubbard was our treasurer and deputy city manager at the time. And so very good working us all together. And so I find that it's important to plan for the unknowns. It's important to plan for the future, both in projects and growth, but also for the personnel, because, you know, there is a balance there.
Great, thank you. Can you talk about how you would relate to the city council and how the council manager model works in your experience?
Yes. So my experience is that the city manager is the conduit for the staff to the council. I say that with the fact of, you know, love to have department heads in to share what's going in their departments, to, you know, firsthand educate council, give them information on projects or programs so that they're fully and have knowledge of what's going on. I feel like the city manager's role is to take the policy that council puts forward and to implement that out through the systems and through the administration, through the staff. So recommendations coming from staff and from the city manager to city council, but understanding that the policy is made there and that we're following through. So just want to be able to bring that expertise forward and then bring back the decision that would then have to be implemented. And I do think it's has to be a strong relationship between the manager and city council because sometimes not everybody sees eye to eye from counselor to counselor or from staff to council or the other way. And so learning how we would collaborate and know whose roles are what. And I also find it really important to have annual work plans so that we can stay on target, make sure that we're going to hit the goals for the residents and the goals that council have, and then our staff individually.
Great, thanks. There are some expectations in our community that the separation or becoming our own independent city will lower our overall municipal taxes. How would you handle it if you see the need to expand operations or other costs and this affects this expectation?
So first I would say, is that the expectation? And if so, then I'd want to hear what the community wants. And so I don't think that's a unilateral decision. I think that's really going to be hearing what the community wants and being very realistic about what that costs. So, we just came through COVID. Many municipalities had a hard time with that. In South Burlington, we had the issue of, are we going to contract services, or are folks going to pay more? And then what happens about growth? And so I think it's a real opportunity to listen to the community in a variety of ways as to what's important, and then educate on why those decisions are being made, whether they're voting on a specific thing because we have to have a bond or whatnot, or just the money in general operations. If there's a need for more staff or for more services, then making sure everybody's on the same page. So I really think it's about transparency, education, and listening.
Great, thanks. Corley, what's one thing you would change about Essex Junction?
One thing I would change. Well, outside of the obvious of maybe the 5 corners becoming the 4 corners, I'm really in favor of the crescent connector or coming down to 4 corners, but really about having that downtown space where people can gather. I know that the parks are a place where folks come together, but really having that space, I think is going to be exciting. I've seen it in South Burlington where folks gravitate more and more to spaces like that, and events become available and people just naturally go to the restaurants and come and hang out. And it's great to hear like, hey, let's meet at such and such. So really that opportunity for folks from all walks of life to come together. So I think the city's already on to what I think would be good for them.
Corley, how would you manage the contract for police services with the town of Essex and deal with the fact that law enforcement in the city is dealt with by a department that you don't supervise?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, if I have this opportunity, to learning more about the police department and the operations there, and then collaboration, obviously, with the town managers and developing the relationship with the police chief and his personnel there directly. And so figuring out how that works, but really advocating and hopefully having a good working relationship as to how the police are serving the community and making sure that we're getting the service that we're paying for. And so it's a new model for me, coming from South Burlington, where we have our own police department, but I'm used to working with them very closely. And I know other communities who also contract for services, and have talked to some of those colleagues about things that may be challenging or not. So I think first is really just to learn, how does it work now? How do we make sure that we're getting what we pay for? And if there are issues that we talk about them together, the town managers as well as the police chief and myself.
Thanks, Corley. Somebody had sent me an article from 2021 where Kevin Dorn had wrote an op-ed piece talking about the importance of having school resource officers in schools. As you know, there's been attention and some have called for the removal of those school resource officers. What's your position?
Oh, this is a tough one. I have seen, when I first went to the city of South Burlington, there was a bomb threat at the school. I know this happened in Essex as well. And it was very scary for the residents. And with South Burlington, it was at the high school with them right across the street, and parents showing up at City Hall as the safe place to be, and walking through that process for several days, and what that did to sort of rip the community apart in some ways, or separate the community. It was a really tough situation, and I was thankful at the time that we had school resource officers there to already be within the school, to have those relationships, and then have our police department, backing that up. I will say that with events that have transpired over the last couple of years, there does seem to be a shift to potentially not having school resource officers. And I think it's a delicate balance. I think I would have to know more about the relationship. So I don't have a stance one way or another. I would like our students to be safe, and I'm not sure about the security measures in the school. And so that would be a conversation I would love to have with the school board to find out more about that. So I can't just blanket say one way or another. I have seen the community go back and forth depending on what the current events are. So I think it's something to continue to be looked at, discussed, and try to act accordingly.
Great, thanks. What are some ways you would envision hearing the voices of marginalized members of our community, and how would you solicit their input and feedback and involve that in decision making of government?
Yes, so it becomes ever more important to go to where residents, visitors, businesses are in the community. I'm sure here in Essex, there are, what I've experienced in South Burlington is community meetings are great, but probably low turnout. People are busy. I think with the advent of COVID, it kind of like pushed things forward for Zoom meetings and ways for, folks to be able to pop in while they're at home making dinner or whatever it may be. But what's been successful that I've experienced thus far is getting out to where folks are. So if there are places where there's affordable housing, perhaps if there's an apartment complex, getting there and having a barbecue for the kids if there's families there, senior facilities, getting in to see the seniors and have those conversations, working with the school district to see if there are ways to share information out or get information back to piggyback on events or ways that they're collecting information. So really collaborating with folks that are already communicating with the populations. One way now that we utilize more is, getting into the churches. If there's a youth group of some sort, then we try to connect with parents in that way. Also, in newsletters that we put out, we also share that with the school district. So they share out our information and we share links to theirs. So I find that's really useful. And then of course, just being available and getting out and seeing folks, whether there's some of our neighborhoods have neighborhood parties. So getting out to that, meeting with business owners, getting to know the folks in town, sometimes just taking a walk through a neighborhood, you run into folks. And so I think there's a lot of different ways. And if we're not meeting the needs with a group, then we need to figure out how to get in front of them. And I think that's the job of not just the city manager, but of the committees, of the city council, of department heads to have those communications and then share that information with each other.
Great, thanks. What unique skill, talent, or superpower would you bring to this position?
Ooh, I think I'm really good at when we have to be in a situation that's tough and you have to hold the line, that At the end of the day, you do the work that you need to do, and you do that in a respectful way, and you try to help people understand and be educated. And I try to learn and listen and find some common understanding. But things can be hard sometimes. And at the end of the day, I think one of the things that I'm good at is focusing on the work and the issue at hand. And when that's done, we move forward. And there, being in a leadership role, that happens all the time. And so I think the fact that I can keep things in the place that they need to be in and move forward and continue on to the next with good relationships, and continuing to have those connections.
Great, thanks. Corley, how would you approach a chronic complainer who may or may not share misinformation in the community?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One, I think it's always good to listen. It's always good to educate, but I also think that it's good to have other folks who are teammates in educating and helping to share the message. So one of the things I say is if there's negative information or misinformation, it's an opportunity for people to be educated. So it doesn't mean it always has to come from me. It might come from a department head or from city council or from a committee member. And I will say that my relationships with folks allow me currently to be able to call someone and say, hey, can you put out some information about that? Can you share your views of this? So for example, in South Burlington, we have a Facebook page called Community Watch. And it was set up years ago, and it was very contentious. And it was like, we got to watch the government and see what they're doing. As a municipality, we never post there, but if there's information that's misinformation going around, then I've been able to develop those folks in the committees and train them to say, hey, when you see that, speak up, share and link back to the information and share that information. So I think it's a group effort of continuing to have that education. Sometimes folks shut down for one person, and I think finding ways to connect and share the accurate information is more important than just trying to decry whatever that negative person, but value their input and value the information that the fact that they are passionate about the topic. I think that's important too.
There is a lot of energy and excitement around becoming a city, and a lot of citizens who have been involved and are becoming involved. How would you harness and build on this citizen engagement?
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited for this 10th city. It's, I believe, the 130th anniversary of Essex Junction, if I have that correct. And I think there's a lot of history. I think there's a lot of pride, and I can feel the excitement from the city, just working in Chittenden County with folks I know who live there and folks that work there. I know several, and it's an exciting time for folks to come together. I think it's an exciting time to make sure the vision as a city, while the people have had a vision, it's now a reality to be its own city, and to make sure that the vision and the goals and the work is truly being heard by the folks, by the municipality itself. So whatever the residents have to say, the council, the commission, it's really an exciting time to hear all the dreams, all the goals, and figure out, well, which ones are we going to work on? Which ones, where do they land? And if there's enough motivation between the different ideas. So I'm excited. I don't have a goal other than to hear what the community wants, look at the comprehensive plan, see if that's still accurate, look at the annual work plans, find out what people want. I think it's a great time to continue that momentum and build the plans into the future and act on them. I like to get things done. So I would love to be able to bring those skills of efficiency and completing goals and getting the dream to be a reality with this community.
Great, thanks. In April, we passed the local option tax, which will start in October. What are some ways that you would envision us utilizing that newfound revenue?
I think it's early to ask me that question as far as knowing what council, what the community wants. This is an exciting thing to have that additional revenue, but the city's also in a place, I believe, financially in a pretty good spot. And so is that money that would be used for capital improvements? Is that money to add to municipal services that aren't currently being utilized? That I don't know. So I would want to hear, but we have it in South Burlington and we allocate it in a variety of ways. And so I would look back to the community, to council, to the committees to hear what are the ways, and additionally staff. I'm sure staff has a list of things that they would like to see, whether in the operational budget or capital improvement.
Great, thanks. How do you like the community to communicate with you and your staff?
I am pretty open to any mode of communication that goes all the way from, I happen to be in the grocery store or restaurant, having those conversations one-on-one, email, text, all the different formats. I'm used to that. I appreciate that. It's, whatever the form is hopefully easy for the person on the other end. I do love seeing people in person and having a real conversation. I think sometimes with email tone and reading into it is hard, but I'm open to all of those, and that's how I operate at the moment. And I'm not afraid for us to sit down and have those face-to-face conversations. So open door, available, wherever, whenever.
Great. How do you define the relationship between municipal government and the public?
Well, I look at municipal government as serving the needs of the residents, the community, the visitors that come to Essex Junction. It is our job to provide the best quality of life, economic vitality, and community engagement that we can. And so I look at that as the main goal.
Great, thanks. As city manager, how do you've touched on this a little bit, but how do you see yourself interacting and engaging with the public?
I see myself being available, listening, getting out. Some of the things that I think about is, when I am in a new situation, whether I'm sitting on a board or I, came to the city or there's a new team or whatever that may be, I like to hear from folks, what's working, what's not working, what do you love, what do you not love? I'm curious. I ask lots of questions because I want to know what people are passionate about. I want to know what's working. I want to know what obstacles they have. There's nothing more rewarding than chatting with somebody who feels like it's too difficult to do X, whether that may be come to city hall to fill out a form because they can't get there during regular office hours. We've now digitized a whole bunch of that. Folks do not need to come to City Hall for a lot of permits, things like that anymore. So to be able to resolve something that's a real difficulty for them, but we're able to find a solution and know that we've made life easier for them, or we've introduced something that their quality of life has increased. That's really exciting for me.
What are some ways as the manager you would support the development and growth of the downtown area?
So I would say it would be first talking to the folks who are in the downtown area. Now, the village is small, but what's happening downtown? Talking to those property owners, talking to the folks who work there, talking to the folks that visit there. What do folks want? In my mind, I see, if there's a new park at 1 Main and there's a pedestrian streetscape there, what an opportunity for folks to come together and for things to really grow for those business owners, to really grow in that area. Additionally, I think that there's a potential for growth. I know that Essex Junction is pretty developed. And so what does some redevelopment, what are the goals for redevelopment of any of the areas look like? And as we look at that, is it a combination of affordable housing and commercial space? Is it community space? Is it more restaurants? Whatever that may be. So I really would want to hear what folks have to say and would listen to that, and then overlay what I have learned in my experience as we've been building city center in South Burlington.
Great, thanks. We do have a few more minutes if anybody has any outstanding questions. Otherwise, we may end just a couple minutes early, Coralie. So I'll put a last call out for questions. Okay, hearing none, Coralie, I think that's we will just end a few minutes early. And I will provide, hopefully folks can still access the chat and the same link for the evaluation. But thank you so much for joining us, Coralie. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Great. So folks in the chat, the same link should be there. So you can go ahead and select that and complete an evaluation for Coralie. That will go on to the city councilors as they make the final deliberations and selection of the next city manager. Both candidates will be engaging in full day processes with staff and the city councilors, and ultimately having city council interviews in executive session this week. And then we anticipate hopefully making an announcement sometime in early August of who has been selected as the first city manager. Thank you all for participating. I will stay on here just for a sec. You can use the question if anybody is having difficulties with the form. Thanks for joining us.